What's going on YouTube? It is Texans Takeover here, back with another video. In today's video, I have a Houston Texans 7 mock draft. This is, um, I guess the most recent news we have is the re-signing of MJ Stewart. It is March 6th and 1 p.m. So there's been, big news across the NFL. Packers releasing Rashawn Gary, Lions releasing Taylor Decker. So another offensive lineman hitting the open market. But there's a lot going on across the NFL. Obviously, this is just a Texans based mock draft. Picking at 28, we'll see if we want to trade up, trade down, or stick and pick. But a lot of teams are going to be needing tackle now. And they did update their rankings, so you can see someone like Monroe Freeling is all the way up at number 13 there. Kai Lemon may have slipped a little bit, all the way at 15. Carnell Tate maybe slightly as well at number 10, so not even in the top 10 anymore, or well, just outside the top 10. Um, and we're here at the spot where Vega Ione goes at 18. So we do have an offensive line need. Both Ethan Atchor, Caden Proctor, and Blake Miller are all available, so I am just going to hold off. Blake Miller goes there at number 27. Um, and here at 28, I think you can go a lot of different directions. I'm going to go a particular direction. If you went to HoustonStressens.com, I have 3 apps that are on there now, all web apps, but still apps at the end of the day that you can go check out. There's a cap calculator, there's a free agency tracker, and then there is a prospect tracker. And one thing that we do know is that the Texans are hosting Mr. Caden Proctor on a top 30 visit. You can see the height, weight, and the age there. He's a really young offensive tackle that has the opportunity to play guard in the NFL. I don't know if he'll shift on the inside, but he has rare athleticism for his size. And I really think if there's anyone that can coach up the likes of a Caden Proctor with his frame at 6'7", I think he weighed in at about 350 at the combine, which I think is a fine weight for him. I think he should be around that 345 range. 340 is good for Caden Proctor. Put it into muscle instead of fat. But he has rare athleticism for his size. Caden Proctor does. And again, if there's a good mentor for him in the league, it's Trent Brown out of anyone. So I am going to go with him there at pick number 28 as we wait for our pick at number 38, which has Ian Atchor there. And I think that's a really good selection if we didn't go with Proctor. And even if you do go with Proctor, it doesn't stop you from getting Ian Atchor. This guy can slot in at guard. Ian Atchor can be that right tackle of the future for you. So there's potential there. There's potential for an Emmanuel Pregnon at Caleb Lomu. These two guys are probably going to play guard in the NFL. Pregnon for sure, obviously, but Lomu, you don't really know. I think he'll end up being a guard. Um, but if I'm at this spot, I'm thinking you can trade. Um, I'd like the idea of moving to like a 43 seems like a good spot for me. And can you pick up like 90 maybe? And if you give up like 243 or, huh, let's see, what makes the most sense here? Go at 139, take back 149. Um, Yeah, I think something like this would be a good iteration of this trade. So we'll offer it only a 49% chance of being accepted, but it is accepted at the end of the day. So, big boost there as Pregnon goes at 41. That would have been my selection at 43 if he was available, but um, isn't. Caleb Lomu's still there at 43, which makes it really hard to pass up on. Um, you know, you're looking at an offensive line of, I mean, do you want Proctor at guard? Does that mean Caleb Lomu and Caden Proctor are your 2 guards next year? That could be something there. You can put Caden Proctor at right tackle, Caleb Lomu at left guard. I don't know what Lomu's measurables were at the combine. That's something I'll certainly look into before I make my judgment because, at the end of the day, um, measurables are a lot for teams, and I think the Texans specifically. Um, whatever Lomu measured in at the combine, then um, that's going to be a big thing. I don't know if he's going to be a guard in the NFL. I would expect him to be, um, but there's potential that he stays out at tackle. I don't think he'd be a left tackle. I think he'd be a right tackle. Um, he measured in at 33 and 3/8, which is decent. Proctor obviously has really good size as well, so you can stick Caleb Lomu at right tackle. You could even play him at left tackle if you want to move Ursary over to the right, but I think this makes too much sense not to do. I'm not too big of a fan of Caleb Lomu. I'd prefer Abasantis, but for the sake of this video, I haven't gone with Lomu in a while, so we'll just pull the trigger there. And you address 2 offensive linemen with your first 2 picks. I think you're doing well so far. And I think something else you could look at You now have 90 in there, so 106 is expendable. I think if you use um, like 69 and 106, you can move up anywhere really. And I think, getting in that 62, 64 range would be great. Maybe even 65 with the Cardinals. It's likely going to be accepted. You take a 141 back and 182. So you're still building up your draft capital and you're moving up 5 spots. But moving back 40, but picking up an extra pick, I think it makes a lot of sense. Um, Especially for what's on the board. I think here at 59, I think Jake Golday is a great pick. Um, I think he provides you with a lot of flexibility that you are wanting. Um, and I just think makes a ton of sense. So I'm going to make that pick there. And then here at 65, you are going to go address the defensive line with Mr. Big Citrus there in Dominic Orange out of Iowa State. Played in a 3-4, but going to move to a 4-3 in the NFL. I think he suits a 4-3 better, even with his size. As Sam Marush is all the way up there at 79. Very early for him. He's ranked 82nd, though, which is fair enough. Definitely deserves it. I'm not saying he doesn't, but I would have thought he's available at 90. Little annoying there. It means you kind of have to switch draft strategy a little bit because that's what I was expecting to do. And you do need help on the offense. Don't get me wrong. You could use maybe an Antonio Williams to come in and be a slot guy. I think Genesis Smith makes the most sense right now. I think Keelan Rutledge could be a very good developmental piece, but Jake Golden and Dominic Orange make a lot of sense for this Texans team, especially if you're not bringing back EJ Speed. I think Jake Golden would play that will perfectly with how good he is in coverage. I think he could even play the Sam if you want to move Henry To'oTo'o to the weak side. Um, Really good run defender, really good guy in coverage. I think he's going to give you really consistent production in the NFL. You can see the height and weight there at 6'4", 240. It's just tremendous. The traits that he possesses with that size, especially at the linebacker position. So, if he's available at 59, I think you take that swing all day of the week. And then Big Citrus, again, just a really big plug-and-play guy on the interior of the defensive line. I like him. I like Chris McClellan, too, a lot. So, I think if you go with any of those guys, then you're pretty well set up. I think you're having a really good draft so far. Drafting, a guard, a tackle, and then a linebacker, D lineman. So you're filling your needs, but you're getting some of the best guys on the board at those positions. So it's not like you're mortgaging a lot of value for the guys that you have selected. Here at 90, I think Keelan Rutledge might be the pick. But I think also a trade down can make a lot of sense to like the 100 range. So, the Raiders here, if you can pick up like 130. Can you pick up 117? You can. I think that makes a lot of sense. So we are going to do that. We're going to trade down from 90, pick up 102 and 117. We have a lot of picks in this draft, and Keelan Rutledge goes there at 100. Little unfortunate, but I think at 102, it still puts you in a position where you can go get one of the better offensive linemen in this class. I really, really like Billy Strouth, and I think he could be a very solid backup piece on the offensive line for the Texans to go get. That's what we do here, and annoyingly, Jack Andrews does go there. Um, so you're back up at 117. I think you go with the guy at the top of the board, and Zakee Whitley, but talking about the Billy Strouth pick, just very good for Notre Dame. One of the main reasons Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price were able to be so productive is due to Billy Strouth. Only played in 7 games this year. I believe the back half of the year, or no, at the beginning of the year, excuse me. Obviously, they played Miami and A&M in their first 2 games, but yeah, at the beginning of the year is when he played. I believe ended it with injury, but you can see he's able to play left guard or right guard. I think if he came to Houston, I think he'd be more of a right guard. Um, but I think he's an incredible player, and I think the Texans would be glad to have him. And at 117, if Zakee Whitley's there, or Wheatley, excuse me, is there, then I think you take him all day of the week. Really good run defender, a little bit older, but I think the production in college speaks for itself. Really good in coverage, really good in the run game. I think you're getting a guy that's going to be an instant producer for you, and really good competition at the safety room if you don't address it in the draft or in free agency, excuse me. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's something the Texans should certainly look at, and that's what they do here. Here at 141, you can see Justin Jolly goes there, another tight end. I don't think the Texans will really look at him just because he doesn't really have that blocking upside like a Nate Borkirksher has, which I think might be my pick here, looking at the options available. I think so. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Nate Borkirksher here at pick 141. And I'm not thinking twice. I mean, yeah, that's just size you can't really pass up on when he's there. Joe Royer, not really a blocking tight end. I am going to go with Nate Borkircher. I think he's got really good traits as a tight end to block, not afraid to. Kind of seems like he enjoys blocking at some points, but good player. I think the Texans could really utilize that blocking prowess that he does possess, and his I'd say secure hands. You can see the drop right there at 5%, which is not bad at all, especially for a tight end. Only one drop throughout the course of the year. Only had 22 targets though, so it wasn't like it was an exceptionally high. Okay, sorry, I had to go somewhere, but catching myself back up to speed. We just went with Nate Borkircher. Um, yeah, great run blocker. I know I already talked about that. So we'll just head over to pick 149, where I think this mock draft has fared pretty well for us so far. Um, Obviously, with Nate Borkircher, you get your blocking tight end. Zakee Whitley, you get your run stopping safety who can also play make. Billy Stroud, you get a developmental piece on the offensive line. Same with Kaden Proctor. And Lomu is someone that can come in and be a surefire starter, excuse me. Um, and then obviously surefire starters there in gold and orange. So here at 149, you have a lot of flexibility with what you want to do. Um, you could go to the defensive line if you want to. You want to go back there. There's definitely potential. I would have loved Max Llewellyn at 141, but it wasn't meant to be in the small draft. Um, I like Cole Brevard. I like Devin Eastern. I like Brandon Cleveland. Um, I like Zane Durant, obviously, as an athlete. I think this could be a spot where, I haven't done this before, but you look at our next year's capital, we don't really have much of it. So, I think if you trade 149, you pick up like a fifth and a seventh next year. I think it makes a lot of sense. Um, so we'll offer that to Green Bay if they're wanting to move up. You can do that. Pick up 2 picks for next year. You don't really give up anything here because you still have a lot of picks left in this draft. Kevin Coleman goes there. That's someone I was debating at 145, was it? No, 149. Here at 165, though, you're back to your regular schedule. You picked up 182, um, but you have a lot of flexibility at this spot to go get the guy that you want. Cade Klubnik's an interesting one if you want a backup quarterback, but the Texans are not trading Davis Mills, according to Aaron Wilson, so I'm not going to make that move. Um, at wide receiver, I like Aaron Anderson. I like Chase Roberts a lot, actually. Trends started at 94 and now started to drop down the board a little bit. I think it's good to value down the board, though. So I think some team's going to be lucky with him. Um, and, if the Texans want to take him at 165, I wouldn't be mad at all. But at 165, I think Logan Jones is certainly an intriguing option. This is prior to free agency, so we don't know if, Cade Mays or someone like that is going to be our um, new starting center. I think Charles Demings could be interesting just because of the in-state connection there. Really good player for SFA. Other than that, though, I think you're looking at bringing in an athlete. I think Trey Moore is certainly one that is an athlete. Um, could play the edge in the NFL. I think that's what he will end up doing, and I think he could be a very good pass rusher at that. So, maybe you want to take a developmental piece there. Maybe Caden Curry, someone you look at, really, really good for Ohio State this past year and has a decent frame as well. Um, like him as a player. I think Trey Moore is a really interesting one, though. I think he's going to transition to an edge in the NFL, and I think if you can coach him up the right way, then he's going to be a really exciting project. Someone that probably won't step in for the Neal after he gets, or his career is done as a Texan. But I think someone that could definitely be a very good rotational piece. So we're gonna go with him there. Um, as we move over to 182, and I think at this spot it does make a lot of sense to go with Mr. Chase Roberts out of BYU, who I just raved about. Good player, in my opinion. I think, he has a pretty high ceiling out of all these people down the board here. Bishop Fitzgerald just went there. I think he's a decent player, too. So did Oscar Delp, who I really like. So, there's some good players down the board. Pretty deep draft class, in my opinion. Um, some guys that I think can make impact on rosters all the way down the board here. And I think one of those is actually Devin Eastern out of Minnesota. Texans met with him at the combine. I think he's a very solid player, especially as a run stuffer. Had a decent amount of sacks for Minnesota this past year, but you can see the height and weight there. Just gonna be, a guy that you can put in, and he's gonna plug gaps for you in the run game. He also has a decent pass rush bag though, so don't take that away from him. But He's mainly known to be a very solid defensive lineman. And I think the Texans could use a second one in this draft. A lot of draft picks in this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, getting up to 11. So, yeah, pretty heavy on the draft. Maybe you do that if you're looking to spend big in free agency. So there's potential for that. And with this last pick in the draft, we'll go with Xavier Sorey Jr. I think he's a good athlete. Actually, no, we'll hold off for now. Any linebackers? I like Leonard Barton. I like Scooby Williams. I like Jimmy Older a lot, actually. Thought he's a really good run defender and a guy that can make plays at the linebacker position. Scooby Williams, really good coverage guy at the linebacker position. So it's down to those two. I'll go with Jimmy Older just because I have Michigan bias. But yeah, that closes everything out. Grade should actually be pretty decent with this one. We'll see what they give us. Kaden Proctor, C plus, B plus for Lomu. Should be probably an A minus. B minus for Gold, A, B for Orange, B plus for these guys. Probably sitting at a B. Yeah, sitting at a B there. I think that's a fair grade. And yeah, let me know what y'all think about this mock draft down below. Would you have gone with Proctor? Would you have gone with Ionach? Or would you have gone with Peter Woods? All those guys were in contention for that first selection. I went with Kaden Proctor just because we have a top 30 visit with him. We're hosting him, and he's the first player that we're hosting. So usually that means the team does have a lot of interest. So there's that. Again, let me know y'all's thoughts and opinions down below. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to like, subscribe. And as always, it's Texans Takeover, and I'm out. Thanks again for watching. Peace.